Welcome, friends, to what hopefully will be truly a football therapy session here on the YouTube channel Football Therapy with me, your host, Jan. Different video today. I'm just gonna talk to you about how I feel. I don't know why that's funny, but sometimes I react with humour when I don't know what to do. And look, I currently am in a place of kind of, I guess, existential crisis with supporting my football club Chelsea. Now look, Chelsea have been in worse positions than we're currently in. We enjoy great revenue. We're playing in the Premier League with some of the best footballers in the world. We've got a high profile manager. We're looking at building a new stadium. You know, Chelsea have been in the trenches before, you know, relegated, just really, really poor in financial issues. So by no means are we in a massive trouble here. But I'm 34 years old. My adult life, I've enjoyed great success with Chelsea. And I am a little bit in existential crisis, kind of trying to figure out what the job is at Chelsea. Because it's 2 years now, it's the new ownership, it's the change of managers, it's the overhaul of players, it's the overhaul of structure, this, that, and the other. And I'm going to go through it today and try and, highlight some of the issues and go through what Chelsea fans are dealing with and what the football media look at Chelsea and think moving forwards. So yes, I'm going to get into it today. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, doing all the things that help and support content creators, and let's get into it. Midweek football strange. If you want my, insight on the performance, the loss away at Old Trafford, which I have very strong feelings of, go watch my previous upload, the reaction to that game. But I want to talk less about that, and it's more holistic. This video, I mean, midweek football can be weird. Like, Manchester City, right? Some Man City fans, and I put fans in inverted commas, already turning on Pep Guardiola. Of course, they're fourth. Aston Villa overtook them. We're speaking about Chelsea today, but I just want to say this stat to you because this is wild. I believe, if the information I got was correct, yesterday was Unai Emery's 50th game in charge of Aston Villa, and comparatively to Pep Guardiola's first 50 games in charge of Man City, he has like 2 or 3 more wins, which blew my mind. And that blew my mind because Guardiola inherited a really strong City side. They had the likes of Prime, David Silva, Vincent Kompany, Kevin De Bruyne entering his prime. He had, Sergio Aguero, and all, it's amazing players. And then Unai Emery inherited a relegation battle from Steven Gerrard. So for him to get more wins is quite astonishing. It just absolutely deserves his flowers. Just goes to show you can take control of a bad situation and make it better. But Chelsea. Let's talk about Chelsea, because we've been really quite worrying for some time now. Maybe like best part of a couple of years. I know, the season after we won the Champions League, which again, I do want to highlight. I think that Champions League win did paper over a lot of cracks, especially how we performed domestically. We haven't been good, like consistently good domestically since we won the Premier League 6 years ago. Of course, we finished third under Mauricio Sarri when we won the Europa League, but that wasn't a given. We sort of got up to that position towards the end, and there was a lot of, I know we didn't know how good we had it back then, but there's still a lot of questions being raised about the harmony, the football, the disinterested lack of emotion from Sarri in terms of, he didn't really fit in terms of character for a Chelsea manager. You could argue Pochettino does, but we've got a whole other host of questions and problems. So, we haven't actually been good, like Chelsea good for a while. Tuchel did an amazing job winning the Champions League, and we went into that Champions League final massive underdogs. We weren't like, Chelsea are a good team. We were terrible in the league when we finished. We lost to Leicester in the FA Cup final like a week before, when we absolutely should have beat them. We were awful. So we accidentally fell into 4th place, I think. So we qualified for the following Champions League. totally by accident. We were so poor. I think we lost to Wolves in the league on the last day, and we were just really bad. And then we lost the FA Cup final. But we summoned all our strength, and we won the Champions League against Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. And that wiped away all that came before, and we just forgot about it, right? But the truth is we were poor. Of course, we started the next season. We won the cups we'd qualified for in the Super Cup and the Club World Cup. We didn't win any of the big trophies in terms of Prem, Champions League or domestic cups. It was just those two. But in a short amount of time, in a few months, we'd won the Champions League, Super Club and the Club World Cup. And that was keeping us afloat. But again, it was sort of papering over cracks. Tuchel's identity at Chelsea of just becoming this really hard team to beat. And just, if you remember, we gave up no chances at all, ever. We just didn't give up chances. That was our thing with the 3-4-3, Thiago Silva, 36-year-old Thiago Silva, N'Golo Kante, in the midfield, and, just senior midfielders. No matter what you had in terms of your opinion of Jorginho, Kovacic, of course, everyone loves Kante, but these were serious senior footballers in the midfield. And people rightly have their own opinions in terms of their play style, profile, whatever. I do personally still subscribe to the fact how, in terms of profile, we were lacking for a long time. We kind of leaned on Kante to mop up problems in the midfield the same way as we'd rely on Eden Hazard to mop up problems in attack, which systemically leaves you short. So I maintain my position on that. But ultimately, we had senior players that could just see themselves through games in moments, which is what we're seriously lacking at the moment. We've got talented midfielders and inferior profiles that suit, even though, again, go and watch my review for yesterday's game of how that midfield looked. But it's just that young and experience. When your most important midfielder who plays as captain is a 23-year-old academy graduate who gets himself sent off, you've got problems in terms of maturity and seniority in midfield. And Chelsea are just seriously lacking there. Now, I wanted to start the video talking about that because we've been adrift for a long time in terms of a club identity, and that kind of we won the league with Jose Mourinho. We had that weird in-between season. We won the league with Conte. We were still Chelsea, that sort of 10-12 year period in the Premier League where people had to respect Chelsea as a super force. Since then, we've lost that, and maybe that has been identified by the new analysts of the owners, saying that we haven't had that for a while. Something fundamental needs to change at Chelsea to try and regain that. And maybe we need to start again. And I kind of subscribed to that a little bit. I endorsed it. And many of the things I do endorse, I'm not going to do any form of mental gymnastics here. I like the fact how we're trying to be financially sensible to a degree, buying all these young players, long contracts on low wages. It makes sense. Starting again and getting the right profiles and investing where we think is important, like Fernandes. The new owners came in, they looked at Chelsea, they analysed Chelsea of old, Chelsea of new, in the Premier League, and and I always say at midfield, all right, let's put all the money in midfield. Let's spend 225 quid on Caicedo and Fernandes. Of course, that's biblical overspending, but they looked at it as worthy of their investment for the long term and for our position of need. And indeed, up to £58 million on Romeo Lavia as well. Chelsea put the money and investment into midfield. They want to start again. They want to build a formidable midfield that can see Chelsea over the line. Now, their intention with that investment, right, and what they want in terms of the result is the opposite of what we're getting. For we're underachieving and underperforming, but also it's developmental. We've bought young midfielders, and they want these young midfielders to, in a way, I'm speculating to a degree here, but in a way, do like a Real Madrid, like Kroos, Casemiro, Modric, just play together forever and know each other so well to the point where you're very talented, you always play together, you've had a decade of time playing together, so therefore your chemistry is unmatched, right? And obviously you're not going to get that straight away, especially when everything's new. So I get that. That's just going to come with time. Kind of sort of reflects on all the investment there. So I like a lot of the stuff they're doing. I have called out for a long time asking for, ever since Emanalo left, who was a technical director, but ever since he left, and we've sort of got bad since he left. Not all on him, of course, and he caught a lot of heat himself, by the way, from Chelsea fans. But I've been calling out for sporting directors for a long time, or sporting director, or director of football. We've got two, and they're meant to be good. Whatever your opinion is, they're meant to be good, right? So, the jury's out. We signed a lot of talented players, but we'll get onto that in a minute in terms of dysfunction. So I wanted that. I didn't like Chelsea overpaying for players and buying older players, essentially doing what Man United are doing now with like Casemiro and, what they've, did with Angel Di Maria and Falcao. I know we bought Falcao or loaned him afterwards, but do you know what I mean? These like Galactico players that they buy, like Varane, Casemiro, for a lot of money, ridiculous wages that are just meant to be good now. It doesn't work. It's unsustainable. And I know Manchester United have got endless pots of money because they generate a lot of money. They also might be in trouble for financial fair play, but they're never going to be properly in trouble, Man United. They're the biggest club in England. They just make so much money. They've got the biggest fan base around the world, etc. But it doesn't make sense, and it hasn't made sense for Chelsea for a long time. Overpaying for players, putting Werner and Havertz on ridiculous money when they haven't necessarily got the productivity. So yes, I wanted to sort of say that. I haven't changed my mind on any of that. I'm into that. But the truth is, not only are we representing this sort of rudderless team that we have for a couple of years, we're much worse right now. I mean, that performance yesterday, and it is chiefly, probably, because of the lack of maturity. And then the headlines pop up, Chelsea spend X amount and they're left in this position. So the questions are asked, manager, players, ownership. Well, the ownership, you'd have to say if they could do everything again, they might do it differently. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they're just like, yeah, all of this has to be done. Like, we have to get everyone out of the Abramovich regime. Not just because they want a clean slate as a business, but all this stuff now, we're under investigation. They're like, they had their own, their lawyers telling them just get everything to do with Roman Abramovich, you need to get rid of because of this legal stuff. So, of course, Bruce Buck, of course, Marina Granovskaya. But if you can just wipe everyone off and start again, fine. I get that. So I wonder, you'd have to say, if they could do some stuff again, they might not have signed Raheem Sterling. I know he's been probably our best-ish attacker this season, and he's the senior player, but he's on silly money. He's on 300k a week. Chelsea will look at that and think maybe they could have bought someone for less for Europe. And, certainly Aubameyang, Koulibaly, I don't think they would have bothered with on massive wages, investing in them. Maybe even Cucurella. I know Cucurella's been playing, but he's on high wages and he costs 62 million quid. I think it's too much. I wonder if they would have found like a sort of Malo Gusto type deputy for that left side. So that certain investment there. Maybe they would have sacked Tuchel straight away. Because Tuchel, some stuff went on with Tuchel down the line, but at the beginning it was clear that he wasn't interested in doing this transitional project with Chelsea. And let's just stop the ownership there and we can move on to managers because we're talking about Tuchel. I think they'd probably do some stuff again. I think they'd just do stuff slower and not upset the apple cart as much. But I think all their intentions remain the same, and this, for a business plan for Chelsea to work long term, they had to make changes. And maybe I would have signed different players. I don't know. Certainly would have signed a striker. I think we would have signed a striker, okay? So we'll talk about players in a second as well. But let's talk about the manager then, because people are talking about Thomas Tuchel. Thomas Tuchel isn't top of the Bundesliga with Harry Kane, with Bayern Munich. He's a great manager. He was a great figure for Chelsea. We loved him. We connected with him. He was very theatrical. He was gregarious, charismatic. He was, the way he celebrated, the way he argued with Conte against Spurs, very Chelsea. We loved that. And also throughout, the geopolitical stuff with the invasion of Ukraine, he handled that very gracefully as well, and all superb. But the truth is, he's not the answer. Him coming and playing a back three again and trying to do whatever he did. Look, like I said, he's not top of the Bundesliga despite having a ridiculously prolific Harry Kane. They lost their sort of Super Cup, which they should have won. They they got knocked out of the Pokal by second division Bundesliga team, which is just unheard of for Bayern Munich. And, when he got originally appointed to do well in the Champions League, they did really badly. So he's not like he's pulling up trees at Bayern Munich. I don't think Tuchel is necessarily the answer. You need some collaborative coach that is going to be okay with what the ownership are trying to do with bringing through these crop of players, making the investment now so the next 10 years they're more sustainable. Us as fans don't like it. It's too it upsets the apple cart and makes things feel unstable. But they looked at Chelsea, they bought Chelsea, and they're like, right, to make this team good again, we need to do this, and it needs to be done now with this amount of money while we can spend it, because I feel like they can spend now more than in the future, which is fine. So they looked at managers that are good at working young players, that are good socially, emotionally, understand like communication and stuff, and hence Graham Potter, because he is really good at developmental stuff. He's good at working with sporting directors at Brighton and bringing players through. And we learned very quickly that despite in theory all about working for Chelsea, he wasn't a Chelsea manager. And that sounds like reductive, like he's not a Chelsea manager. But you understand it, I understand it, so let's not dwell on that. And then again, similarly, Pochettino, he's got a bit of the Graham Potter in terms of working with young players, working with building clubs. Look at what he did at Southampton, look at what he did at Tottenham, and they're both in the Premier League, two different clubs examples. But also, the Chelsea ownership, the sporting directors, they had an exhaustive process when, of course, speaking to Pochettino, and he kind of showed that he can do the Graham Potter thing, but he's a little bit more like Conte and Tuchel in terms of passion and character, and that's going to resonate a bit more with the Chelsea fans, which I think it did, and it does to a degree. But is he good enough, and is it working? So the thing to discuss here is, I never thought Pochettino is like the end goal for this ownership and he's going to win us a Premier League. But I was totally cool with that. I've moved my goalposts as a Chelsea fan, understandably, looking at what's happening. And I think many Chelsea fans have been very understanding and patient with not just owners or managers, but with this situation at Chelsea. But I think very few thought that Pochettino was the guy to win Chelsea a Premier League again. But what he seemed like a really appropriate candidate to develop Chelsea into a confident attacking team again, his Tottenham team. He's good at developing young players. Can he turn so-and-so into a 17-goal Premier League goal a season Dele Alli? Can he turn a striker into what he did with Harry Kane? All Pochettino's defenders, like his centre-backs, Alderweireld, Vertonghen, Kyle Walker, Trippier. Look at Walker now. Look at Trippier now. Man City, Newcastle. Even Davies and all the other fullbacks that were really good. And, he developed these players really well. So many of us, Chelsea fans, and indeed just general football fans and media, looked at that and thought, he's the right man for this job. Even if he just gets Chelsea back in, the top 5, 6, 4, and makes them like a formidable force again, then, Chelsea can really look around and find out which is the next philosophy, sort of super dogmatic coach to really push them over the edge, the next Guardiola, like an Arteta, but find their own. That's going to be that next level, meticulous, ruthless character that takes Pochettino's good Chelsea and turns them into a title challenger. I think many of us understood that and were cool with that. Do you know what I mean? So, and that would have been profound progress from where we have been / are. But now, my concern now is I'm having an existential crisis of what the job is. Because it was okay, we've had this ridiculous transition. We've got all these new players. They're young, them from around the world. None of them really know the culture of Chelsea. And I've just got so many questions because we don't look like anything. And I do have a bit of sympathy for Pochettino. I'm not happy with him, really, massively. But I also have sympathy. Yes, we're back up to double digits for unavailable players, which is mental, by the way. And, what some of it's of our own making, and Gallagher was out from a red card, and the week before we had Reece James. That is just, immaturity is best. You know, 2 young captains, probably a little overexcited. Hopefully we'll learn from that. But we can't have that many unavailable players. So I looked at yesterday what he had available to him, Pochettino, and it wasn't much in terms of what he put out, how he could change the game. But I suddenly looked at this job, him managing Chelsea, and thought, I don't even know what this is. It's not even like you're coming into a team where you're like, okay, bring these young players through. Eventually, we've got, you know, this player here, that player there, and you know, try and change the formation and tactics. It's almost like, you know, design a football club. Like, the job, I think, and I'm trying to look at, is so tricky that I don't even know. It's just really, really difficult. I don't even think, like, you know, it's build a culture, it's build a foundation, it's blood in players, it's develop players into certain positions and certain styles, it's score goals consistently, it's beat these certain teams, it's, you know, find a formation, it's speak a certain way about the club, and, you know, trying to reference with echoes from old, but also starting again and, you know, changing people's perception of what success is and finding... I'm so lost that... And it's just kind of like a long time coming from, even before these owners as well, that the job itself has become such a almost like peculiar abstract thing that I'm not even sure to understand, that maybe just we need such a long time with the same players to understand what they are. Because I don't understand what they are. And that's why I think the management is such a tricky job. I don't think a new manager comes in and fixes this. So it leaves you with like the assets and the players. Let's talk about the players. All right, well, we've got players out firstly, and we're back in that kind of thing of, oh, okay, when, you know, I'm thinking 3 players to return to the team to make a massive difference. And those players, or 4 really, 4 players. And there's the obvious, Christopher Nkunku, oh, this elite finisher who's senior. He's 25, isn't he? Or 25, 26. And compared to all the children up front, a little bit of that, who's used to scoring a lot of league goals at high level and, you know, the France international, he'll have to help, even though the unhelpful pressure has returned. Of course, we've reflected here recently on how Romeo Lavia is such a highly rated midfielder that he can change tactical dynamics of how a team plays football. That could be welcome. Certainly when you've got Ugachukwu out, Gallagher out, and our midfield is getting carved through like butter by Scott McTominay. Ben Chilwell. I think Ben Chilwell is massive. I know people like, he's been playing at the left wing, which is mental. Chilwell is such a good left back. He's so good. And again, he's a more senior player. How old's Chilwell? 27? You know, he's like another grown-up that we need on the pitch. And he is a grown-up. He's a grown-up. In fact, when I hear Chilwell talk, I said this, I had such massive reservations. And I still do. I'm totally happy with it being the case. But I've got big reservations about Reece James being captain, just because he's just this really quiet, like, character who's just like softly spoken, doesn't really, like, his sort of head goes down a lot. For me, that's not a Chelsea captain. Maybe Levi Colwill will be one day. He's wearing the number 26, you know, like the way he talks and the way he, like, you know, shows character. He's still far too young to be captain, and you could see silly things he does. But I do worry about, I know Ben Chilwell's our vice captain, and when I heard him speak in pre-season, I was like, if I didn't know who Reece James was and how good Reece James was, and that he was an academy product, and, like, you know, he's come from Chelsea, those celebrations when he holds up the Chelsea shirt to the opposition fans, like stuff that really resonates with you as a fan. If I didn't know any of that, if I heard Ben Chilwell speak like he did in pre-season, and Reece James, I think they both did press conference, and you said, who do you want to be captain of your football club? Chilwell would have won by a freaking landslide. The way he spoke about Mudryk, the club, Chelsea, and the way he, like, is eloquently talking about the club, and, you know, this guy is an amazing footballer. You could say, oh, they're both amazing. They're both put amazing performances in a Champions League final against, you know, Man City, and, you know, they both score a lot of goals, and they're dynamic, and I would have chosen Chilwell. I'm not saying Chilwell should be captain over Reece James. I'm just saying he has those strengths, and I still have reservations over Reece. But him on the pitch, I think, is massive. I think he'd be him coming back. And Pochettino, look, I know you want to play centre-backs at left-backs and left-backs like Martin and Chilwell in the front four, but we're going to have to learn to stop that, buddy. Maybe Thiago Silva being phased out eventually. I'm not saying he should be. He's excellent, right now. But maybe eventually when you've got young, dynamic centre-backs, you can play just full-backs. You play Chilwell left-back. Which leads me on to centre-back as well. And again, Wesley Fofana. Disasi was awful. I'm not judging Disasi's whole season on that game yesterday, but I think we've spent £69 million on Wesley Fofana, and I thought that was an absolute snip. I thought Leicester were going to charge more than the £80 million they got for Harry Maguire. They were adamant they wanted Fofana to be a record transfer for a centre-back. We got him for less than £70 million. He's so good, guys. He's so good. But again, the fact he's been injured, it does bring it down to also what's going on with the Chelsea medical team. I've said it before on the channel, we used to laugh at Arsenal for having constant injuries when Chelsea never had injuries. We had this wonderful medical team. We don't need to go over that ground again. It is what it is. The concerns are the same concerns there with the medical team. But also, to finish on players as well, no seniority is fine. We've spoken about that, whether it's at the back. I know Thiago Silva, culturally and language barrier, I do think it's affected him. I said it before. He speaks Italian, Portuguese, and French fluently. He just sort of made the decision that he's not going to learn English at late 30s, and I totally dig that. But despite his age and seniority, he doesn't have that, John Terry when he was, as a captain talking to people at the back. He doesn't have that effect. So we're lacking. And then I do think Caicedo and Enzo, they're young, they will come good over time with coaching and settling, and when everything settles, other people will settle. I think they are very good players that are going to be long-term successes at Chelsea. And I do think Mudryk was probably a good long-term buy. And he's not a starter at the moment, which actually serves him well, or often isn't. And he's contributing. And I think like Cole Palmer, for different reasons, Cole looks confident and just ready. Probably because he's bred from Man City's, machine. But I do think Mudryk will be just good as well. But Noni Madueke, he's a good technical winger. Why did we buy him? Opportunism. Is he going to make Chelsea better right now? I'm not so sure. And Nico Jackson, look, man, I know it's trendy to dig out Jackson at the moment. We actually looked at his numbers. They're dominant in Chelsea's team. And that's probably because he plays all the time like Sterling. But the truth is with Nico Jackson, they say he's confident on the training pitch. I don't think this looks like a confident guy. This guy hasn't been. He's 22 years old. I think he recently turned 22. Correct me if I'm wrong. This guy hasn't been a striker for a year. Or if that. He was a winger at Villarreal. So a relatively notable Spanish team. By the way, and this, look, I don't mean to do him a disservice, but he was going to go to Bournemouth, but he failed a medical in January. Just a few months before we signed him. He had a failed move to Bournemouth. I'm not saying we shouldn't have signed him. I think he was good value, and I'll talk about that a bit more. But he was a winger that they moved down the middle, right? And he scored a few goals, and they were like, oh, maybe he can play as a striker, and he's in form. Suddenly, this Villarreal guy, winger that was moved to the middle, this young guy with potential, who had a good bit of form, he's Chelsea Football Club's starting striker. That is freaking mental. And I've only just looked, I know this has always been the case, and I do think he's got high potential. I've done videos on him and his stats, and look, yeah, I know he scored the underwhelming hat-trick, but he still scored a few goals for us. Look, if he had scored one more goal, remember when we finished third under Tuchel? I can't remember when Jorginho was our top scorer with 7 Premier League goals. And we finished in the top 4 with 7 goals as our top scorer. So he's nearly got that already as a striker. And he might finish the season with 11, 12 Premier League goals, which isn't the worst for, like I said, a young striker who's just come to the Prem in a mental Chelsea side who was only recently a winger. But the fact how we're at the position now at Chelsea Football Club, who's had so many iconic strikers. I know you could say, the only 2 decent strikers we've had in the Premier League era are Drogba and Costa. Maybe we still had Anelka and other sort of top tier centre forwards brought to the club, failed or not, even if it was Torres or other strikers as well. there were still high-profile players. For us to just lean on this guy totally. At the time when we signed it, I was like, oof. Well, imagine if this works. This is going to be a good look for Chelsea. For once, we've not spent 100... In Lukaku, 100 million. How could I freaking let that go out of my head? Probably because it's suppressed. I'm trying to suppress it as a memory. But do you know what I mean? That's what we're doing. So I was thinking, wow, £30 million Nico Jackson from Villarreal. If this works, this is going to be a ruddy good look for Chelsea. It's super value. Do you know what I mean? So I was really kind of like into it at first. And now, but it felt like a bit of an off-chart, a bit of a risk. And now looking back, I'm like, yeah, it was a risk. It's no, criticism on the lad. Like I said, he's this kid who's just come to the UK. He's caught lacking, like, on the phone to Astrid Wet. It's dreadful scenes all around. And here we are. So, I don't even, it's not on him, really. It's all kids. Jackson, Breuer, Mudryk, Palmer, Caicedo, Enzo, Gallagher, Levi, Colwill, Malo Gusto. Children all over the park. No seniority. A new club and no confidence. Injury crisis, and a manager whose job is becoming more and more peculiar and abstract, who has upset a lot of people the way he reacted to that loss. I appreciate I haven't solved any issues in this video. I just wanted to highlight the talking points and going through it, and a reminder, hopefully, to all Chelsea fans, just where we're at and what we're doing here. So, thank you for joining me. Please do consider supporting the content by liking, subscribing, and sharing. I look forward to reading your comments, and hopefully I'll see you guys back here very soon. Take care of yourselves. Peace.